And we are live. Hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Level Up Live. Come on in. Just going to give a few minutes for everybody to get in. I'm so excited about our guest tonight. I can't wait to tell you about her. Again, welcome to Level Up Live, where we showcase the remarkable things that women physicians are doing both inside and outside of the exam room. So our guest this evening is a good friend of mine, Dr. Jarita Hagans. I'm going to read her bio. She said maybe I didn't want to read the whole thing, but actually I do, because she has such an interesting story and such an interesting background that I want to share it with you guys. So Dr. Jarita Hagans, MD, is a board-certified family physician, foodie, author, and artist. She attended Howard University in Washington, D.C. for undergraduate and medical school. Afterwards, she completed a surgery internship at Carilion Roanoke Memorial Hospital in Roanoke, Virginia. Eastern Virginia Medical School, Portsmouth Family Medicine, is where she received her family medicine training. She had the honor of being Intern of the Year and Chief Resident while training there. Operating a clinic for battered women's shelter and providing medical care for a homeless shelter were two of her favorite projects. After residency, she practiced in post-Hurricane Katrina New Orleans and developed a love for cooking, gardening, and natural remedies. Since moving home to Maryland, she has worked at medical offices in Washington, D.C., as well as Baltimore and several other Maryland cities. She is the founder of Zion Family Practice, LLC, offering in-person and telemedicine visits in Washington, D.C. Dr. Hagans has had the pleasure of speaking about healthy eating, lifestyle changes, STD prevention, and pathways to a medical career at schools, churches, and community events since 2005. She has spoken at the Student National Medical Association Annual Medical Education Conference, as well as the Graduate and Professional Schools Workshop at Morgan State University. She is author of MD Dreams, Practical Advice for Every Stage from Pre-Med to Residency and Beyond. Women Who Lead, Extraordinary Women with Extraordinary Achievements is a collaborative book that she co-authored along with 21 other women. Her third book, Good Food Now, Recipes and Tips That Will Save You Time and Sanity, even if you don't have time for that, is available on Amazon for Kindle. Dr. Hagans is also the author of 3 children's books, Maya and the Golden Chess, Mason and the Magic Cape, and Kid Astronaut, Space Dreams. So join me again as we welcome Dr. Hagans. Hi, Dr. Jarita. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so happy to have you here with us. So tell us, so Zion Family Practice is your baby,
yes.
Right? That's the one I most identify with you. But tell us your journey. How did you go from, you said you were in New Orleans, post-Katrina New Orleans. How did you go from post-Katrina New Orleans to Zion Family Practice in Washington, D.C.?
Okay. So Maryland is my home. I was born in DC and raised in Maryland. But I ended up being in New Orleans for a loan repayment program. And the clinic where I worked at initially ended up closing down, and I moved to a clinic around the corner, and it ended up being like everything I ever dreamed of. They had a community garden, they had a kitchen where they had cooking classes, nutritionists, acupuncturists, you name it, they had it there. Everything that was kind of geared towards natural medicine, herbalists, but it wasn't home. And I wanted to take that same model and bring that back home. So I came home, and then, life never goes as planned.
No, never.
So I spent years and years like doing locum tenens work, which is, like, for people who don't know, like temp agency for doctors, filling in for doctors who are on maternity leave and things like that. But finally got everything in place so that we were able to open last year. And I'm happy to say that we were able to open inside of my childhood church in DC, the church that I grew up in, the people that basically prayed for me to become a doctor And my high school pastor, rest in peace, Reverend Kearney, he's really one who planted the seed in me in thinking that there could be a clinic inside of the church. That was one of his dreams, to have like a family life center and have a clinic inside the church. And he would talk about this way before I even went to medical school. So he's the one who kind of planted that seed. So I'm happy to say that we're there and we're doing that. We're part of the way to the model to realize the full dream. So the clinic is going, we're seeing patients, we're doing health classes and doing healthy eating classes, and the next piece will be the garden. So that's the future.
That's outstanding.
Yeah.
Congratulations. I'm so happy for you. So
Thank you.
now, you mentioned all of the different things, the kind of on almost an integrative approach, if you will, that the clinic in New Orleans, took to taking care of patients. Tell me, how did that change your view of medical care? What kinds of things did you see there working that made you want to replicate that model in your own clinic?
So it kind of changed my mind or introduced me to new ways to treat things. So in addition to the herbalist making tinctures and things like making elderberry syrup and things like that for different conditions, they also took like a extensive nutrition history, and it really got me into thinking about what people were eating and what people were drinking and how it contributed to their health. And then I became kind of a patient of the herbalist. So I had really bad acid reflux at the time. And they kind of taught me about probiotics and eliminating bad bacteria from your gut based on what you ate and drank. And it fixed me. So then I kind of became a believer and started wanting to learn about more natural ways to treat certain conditions.
I see. So tell me, how do you approach it with that in mind? How do you approach a new patient? What's different about the history that you take, and maybe some of the remedies that you recommend? Do you do those tinctures and things that you were exposed to in New Orleans?
I wouldn't say that I do tinctures per se, but I have kind of an idea of what people can do to try to treat things naturally if they're open to that. Like some people only want a pill. They don't want to try anything herbal. But let's say I have somebody who has some anxiety. If their anxiety is not severe, I'm still gonna take you through the regular way that I diagnose it, have you do a anxiety scale and check off your symptoms and things like that. But depending on if it's not that severe and maybe you don't need to take a pill, let's try some ashwagandha at bedtime and see if that helps your symptoms. If you're having trouble sleeping, maybe some valerian root, things like that. And I always want to know what kind of things you're eating and drinking, because that's gonna contribute to everything.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then also, I would imagine knowing something about people's um, emotional history may come into play too. You talked about some of the gut health stuff, and I know
Right.
some of those things. What is it? I heard that the gut is the second brain. That it has,
Right.
probably as almost as many neurotransmitters in the gut, if not, more than there are in the brain.
Right. So one of those feel good hormones, some of those things are made in the gut, like your serotonin. So if your stomach is kind of irritated and leaky and making a lot of acid, you're probably not going to feel very good emotionally. So healing the gut has to do with a lot of things, your emotions, whether or not you have reflux, all kinds of stuff that you wouldn't think are necessarily related to the stomach.
Okay, great. So tell us about Zion Family Practice. I know you say it's in your childhood church, and that it was a vision of your teenage pastor, or your pastor when you were a teenager. How
Right.
did you manage to bring it to reality, bring it to fruition?
So there is an old part of the church and a new part of the church. The older part of the church, they've kind of converted the old sanctuary into like a church museum, and then the rest of it they were using for office space. And it actually was kind of already heading in that direction of using it for offices, because there was a mental health agency in the same hallway of the place where I have my office now. So they were kind of already moving towards renting that space out for offices. So it wasn't a huge leap for me to put a medical office there when they already had the mental health agency there. So the church itself was kind of moving towards doing a mind, body, spirit thing and kind of taking care of the whole person.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
So now, did you have to do special zoning and other things? Because I imagine a church is zoned for one thing, but a medical clinic zoned for something else.
So the zoning is already done because there's already other agencies in the building. Like there's a nursery school in the building, the mental health agency. There's a social services agency in the building. Mhm.
Oh, well, that's excellent too, because that way you
Yeah,
can plug your patients into their social needs. If some arise when they see you.
right. And it's kind of a cross pollination. Like I can help your clients, and you can send your clients to me.
Excellent, excellent. Sounds like the only
Mhm.
thing you guys are missing the pharmacy and radiology. You'd be a full service place.
This is true. Maybe a little lab.
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah. So
Mhm.
you say that your dream has not been completely realized. Tell me, what do you envision? Like, what do you want Zion Family Practice to be?
So I really kind of wanted to be a wellness center where all the parts of the clinic are feeding each other. So have our clinical part, which is the regular office visits, and then the health education piece where we're going out in the community and doing health fairs or giving health talks. And then we bring people into the church too for health talks, like a blood pressure class or diabetes class. So we're doing that. And then the church kitchen hasn't been in use since the COVID pandemic started. But I really like to turn it into just an educational class where we're sampling foods to really cooking with people and have people who have their different cooking stations in the banquet hall and really show people how to use it. And then that last piece is the garden, which hopefully we can get it to produce so that we're then able to use the food in the cooking class and maybe even have people who have plots in the community gardens sell their own produce and benefit themselves that way.
That's excellent. So now, is there enough ground where the church is located for the garden? Or are you going to have it someplace else?
The church has a lot of land. They actually have a house that's across the street, and there's a huge open field that's not really being used for anything, which is gonna be, I think, an ideal place for the garden.
So this has been
Mhm.
embraced by the church community. Everybody's kind of behind the vision.
I think so. The only problem is that some people kind of still see me as a little girl. I'll always be little
Yeah.
Jarita to some people, and they haven't wrapped their minds around the fact that I'm a medical professional yet.
Right, right, and well grown. Right. It's interesting how that happens. That people who knew us when kind of keep
Mhm.
us in a box and sometimes struggle to see, who we've become.
Right.
Yeah, but
So
I
I
think
think it'll take a little bit of encouraging.
I see. I see. Well, good, good, good. So tell us about your books. I didn't know this is something I learned from your bio. I didn't know you were an author. Children's books as well as some other books. Tell us about them.
Okay. So the first book, MD Dreams, Practical Advice for Every Stage from Pre-Med to Residency and Beyond, that is kind of like a mentorship book, something that I would want people to have if they were wanting to get into medicine. It's kind of something that I wrote for students who were in high school or pre-med or what have you. And the first half of the book is kind of a little bio, like what happened to me as I was going from high school to college to pre-med and all the little failures and and
Setbacks.
setbacks and what have you, and how I end up getting to this point. And then the second half of it is kind of a how to, be like, okay, here's the website that you need to go to. Here's a checklist of all the stuff that you need to get ready as you're applying to medical school. Here's the nuts and bolts. Here's some books that you need or websites that you need or what have you. So that's kind of what it is.
So, what was your
Mhm.
inspiration for that book?
So there were people who kind of contacted me for mentorship where I couldn't necessarily hold that person's hand all the way through. So it was something that I could give to people and kind of mentor them through the book with like, here, this is something that you can use to kind of take yourself through. Or somebody who was not really at that point yet. Like somebody would say, "Oh, my daughter's 8 and she wants to be a doctor." So she's
Yeah.
not really at the point of me holding her hand and saying, "Okay, now it's time to apply. Let me read your essays for medical school." So she's not really at that point, but it's something that she can look at and get inspired. Just like I read Ben Carson's book back in the day, Think Big, when I was 12. I wasn't ready to apply to medical school,
Sure.
but it's something that inspired me.
It planted a seed. Yeah,
Right.
like your garden. So, is that book widely available
It
now?
is. It's still available on Amazon. I wrote that ooh, many, many years ago. I think I wrote that in maybe like 7 years ago, something like that. It's been out for a long time. I probably need to rewrite it and update the resources that are in it. But I wrote it a long time ago, but it's still available on Amazon. And I still give it to people as
Do you,
well.
do you do
Mhm.
formal mentoring as well?
I haven't been in any formal mentoring. The mentoring that I've been in, as of late has been kind of informal, just people who know me, like, hey, can you talk to my daughter, cousin, sister, what have you? Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. Now tell us about the other books.
Okay, so Women Who Lead is a collaborative book, and that was brought together by Dr. Sharon Hargrove Porter. She's a graduate of Howard University, like me, but she's a graduate from the School of Education, and she really has done a lot in education in the PG County school systems. And she's the principal at Rose Valley Elementary School. And we actually met at an event that another person had. We had tables next to each other and we kind of started talking and about the things that we do. And she actually brought together this group of women from all different walks of life, people who are authors, singers, chef, you name it, and put us all together in a book. And I kind of was apprehensive about writing a chapter for that book because I was like, I don't really consider myself a leader. At that time, I wasn't really in charge of anything. My clinic wasn't open yet, but I kind of thought about it and said, well, I guess I kind of am a leader in the way that people can kind of use my life to teach themselves a lesson.
Yeah, I would say not only that, I think just, physicians tend to have a role of some level of authority in the community because people come to you. They look to you for advice, they look to you for help, and they, look to you to have the knowledge that they need. So that makes you a leader, I think, kind of inherently almost.
Yeah. So what I talked about in that chapter of the book, it's kind of the different things that happened to me. Failing organic chemistry, having to take that again when I was in undergrad, and um, not getting into medical school the first time I applied. I ended up teaching school for a year, seventh grade earth science, and um, problems with the boards and just different things that happen. So I don't think anybody has necessarily has a straight path to medicine. Everybody has some kind of
Yeah, I mean,
circuitous
I can
route.
speak for me. I certainly can. You're right. So it sounds like it's a chapter about resiliency.
Yeah. How to fall down and get back up and fall down and get back up. Fall down 7 times and get up 8.
So what kept you motivated? Falling down those 7 times. What made you get up that eighth time?
So, believe it or not, it's probably the people in the church who were believing in me and people who were depending on me. Like some people were like, I'm not I'm gonna wait until you become a doctor. Like, hey,
To
don't
see a
wait.
doctor, wait a minute.
Don't wait until I become a doctor to go to the doctor. Like it's gonna be a really long time. But there were so many people that believed in me that I couldn't give up. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So now,
Mhm.
the third book.
So the third book is a recipe book. So I don't do well, I can't say I don't do as much cooking. I still do as much cooking as I used to, but I don't necessarily video it as much. And I'm gonna get back to it because people are asking, like, oh, what happened to your cooking videos? I used to cook a lot online, especially during the pandemic. Um, when everybody was at home or a lot of people were at home. So I don't video it as much. It takes a long time to video a cooking episode and edit it and whatnot. But I love cooking. I love to try to make traditional recipes a little bit healthier. So
Okay,
that's kind of what that book is about. Trying to give you some quick ideas that are still healthy to kind of get food on the table fast.
good. So
Yeah.
it's mostly healthy. It's not necessarily plant-based.
There are some plant-based recipes. It's not completely plant-based. Like I tell some people, I'm not a vegetarian, but I eat some vegetarian stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now,
Yeah.
okay, so those are those books because this is just if you guys are paying attention, this is really a wide range of interest that you have here. So now we're going to transition over to the children's books. How did you end up writing children's books?
So I have nieces and nephews. I have more nieces and nephews now than I did when I wrote those books. But at the time, it was for my brother's children. He has a older son, and then he has twins that are a boy and a girl. So once you do something for one, you have to do it for the other. So I can't
Yes,
write one for my niece and not one for the boys. So I gotta write a book for everybody.
I see. I got
So
it.
that's
I
how that
understand.
came about. Miles, Mason, and Maya.
Ah,
Mhm.
okay, okay.
Yeah.
But then what made you write the book in the first place?
I wrote a poem for them. That's really all it was gonna be. It was like a little poem with a picture with it. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I can turn it into a book. Maybe I can create a whole gift thing for them. And the book is not out yet. It's created, but a whole bunch of publishing stuff going on. But so they're old now. They're much older than they were when I wrote
Sure.
the book. They're probably too old. They've read the book. They've seen it. They have their little mock copies, but they're
Yeah,
way older than they were when I first wrote the book. But it really was a kind of a gift idea for them.
that's very
Mhm.
creative. I have nieces and
Yeah.
nephews, and I have to tell you, I haven't thought of writing books for them. So don't discount that.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your upbringing because, like I said, you have so many varied interests. There's the cooking, of course, medicine, author, community leader, mentor. What shaped you into this person that's before us today?
I think it really came from the people that were around me. Like, I think it matters what you say to children and what you expose them to. So, my grandfather is a pig farmer in North Carolina. So, he raised hogs, and they always had some kind of livestock, goats, chickens, cows, you name it, on the farm. So, a lot of that gardening that kind of came from that going down there to the country in the summertime, and they really grew their food and only went to the store for like a few things, the stuff that they couldn't grow, salt, sugar, stuff like that. So I think that's where that gardening bug came from. And then the cooking is really my mom. My mom is everybody thinks their mom is the greatest cook in the world, but
Did your
my
mom get the
mom
award?
is the greatest cook in the world. I mean, just cook nonstop and everything's amazing. And my mom still does a lot of cooking for me. When we have our healthy cooking classes, my mom's real excited about it. She's like, "What's the menu gonna be?" She's like, "I'm gonna make a bean soup and do this and do that." Like, well, you go for it, and I'll take the care of the educational part.
That's awesome that that's something that you guys can share.
Yeah. And then the medicine part, I really wanted to be a veterinarian growing up because I loved the animals and I got into the animals from being on the farm with my grandfather and all. But it really changed from me wanting to be a animal doctor to a people doctor. My aunt gave me a book, gave me Ben Carson's book when I was 12, the Think Big book, and I was just enamored of him describing the surgeries that he was doing, and that's kind of really what flipped the switch into medicine. Hmm.
Did you know any doctors growing up?
Only doctor that I would say that I knew growing up was my personal doctor, and then my cousin is a cardiothoracic surgeon, and he was in he's a lot older than me, and he was in residency when I was a kid. Yeah. Hmm.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, if there was one thing that you could tell our viewers that would inspire them to inspire others, what would it be?
I think I would say always pour into children and show an interest in them and show an interest in what they're interested in. Don't try to push them in a particular direction. I feel like that's what my parents tried to do. They exposed me to a lot of different things. Even if I felt that I didn't like it at some point and put it down, they took us to plays. We learned instruments, piano, clarinet, whatever. Took us on historical trips and just exposed us to a lot of things. I think that's another reason why my interests are so varied because they showed us a lot of stuff so we could then figure out what path we want to go down. So we have a lot of choices.
Great, great.
Mhm.
So now tell our viewers where they can find you. Where can they find Zion Family Practice? You know, all the details.
Okay. So people can find us at zionfamilypractice.com. So that talks a little bit about the practice, and there's a contact form there if people want to get more information or if they want to be contacted for an appointment. And then on all social media, I'm at Dr. Jarita. So on Instagram, I'm at Dr. Jarita. On Facebook, I'm at Dr. Jarita. Um, and doctor spelled out DoctorJarita. So that's how to find me.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being with us this evening. It's been a pleasure. Um,
Thank you.
Hopefully, we'll hear more about Zion Family Practice once it gets to wherever it is your dream for it lies. So, thank you
I,
again.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Take care, everybody. We'll see you next week.
All right.